Hi, I'm Kate Bailey. I'm a coach, an author, and a sober mama. And this is Love Sober, the podcast for the sober and sober curious. You know who made it. Hi, and welcome back to Love Sober, the podcast for the sober and sober curious. And today I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Courtney McMahon. Courtney is the Radical Wellness, and she is a holistic sobriety coach. And we've known each other for a couple of years, haven't we?
Yeah.
I think we've been trying to record the podcast for a couple of years.
Yes, it's coming up on a couple of years that we've been. Yeah, no, we've known each other for a couple of years now, and I'm just so happy to be here, seeing your face on Zoom again, and having a chat with you. Yeah, I'm in Connecticut.
So it's about 5 for me, so it's early in the morning for you.
Yes, which is reminiscent of when I was training with you, because I would wake up at, was it 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning?
Oh my goodness. You did, didn't you? Yeah, because we have quite early starts on those weekend days. Yeah. So Courtney did the Addictive Behaviors coaching program when we were running that with Mandy for the Coaching Academy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that was awesome. I remember those days. Yeah.
It was such a nice group.
Yeah, it was a lovely group, wasn't it? So yes, I'm really delighted that Courtney's come on today, because she's a sober sister, and as we always do, we're going to sort of dive into your story a little bit, if you don't mind, about what brought you to the decision to be alcohol free.
Sure. Yeah. So my story is really goes along the lines that I was drinking. I started drinking when I was a teenager, like most of us do, kind of just to make sure that I could stay in the mix socially. It was never, for me, I never had that experience where I took a drink and immediately loved drinking. I really drank starting in high school so that I could be included and feel like I was a part of the mix. But it was never something that I loved. I say that I worked really hard to get good at drinking until it became, not so good. And that was really, connected to me moving to New York City. I went to college in New York City. I started a career in advertising in New York City when I was in my 20s, and worked at an advertising production agency that was British owned, and had this combination of advertising drinking culture plus the boys club drinking culture. And I really flexed my drinking muscles during that period of time. And drinking became ingrained in everything that I did, in my work life, my social life, my relationship. It was just, alcohol was always there. It was, for me being highly ambitious in my career, I went hand in hand with, that kind of work hard, play hard mentality. And it was just a part of my life, my existence, everything that I did. Mm. And I think that I struggled with I struggled with my drinking internally for a very long time before I came to the realization that, alcohol was a problem. It was the problem for me. It was, problematic in so many ways. And so to kind of I could go on all of the details. I had many sort of aha moments, that could have been rock bottoms, and weren't. When I was so I drank all through my 20s and into my 30s, and my career kept getting better and my life kept seeming better on the outside. A nicer apartment, nicer car, better trips. And I just felt so depleted and so empty and all of the things. And I was just searching externally for everything in every way I possibly could. When I was 33, I was in a relationship. I got pregnant and lost the pregnancy at just shy of 12 weeks. It was a very horrible experience for me. And my drinking turned from this like fun escape to this escape. I drank a lot more on my own. I wasn't able to fully process the experience that I had gone through. I wasn't able to fully process, the divorce that had come before that. There was a whole combination of horrible emotional things that I just wasn't processing, and I was drinking my way through. And shortly thereafter that, I got a DUI. And it was a horrible experience, and I had so much shame around my DUI and my pregnancy loss and my divorce that had come before that and all of the things. And I just kept it all to myself and dealt with it all on my own. Only maybe 2 people even knew that I had a DUI at the time. And I share all of this to say that these were really horrible things that kept bringing to light the issue with my drinking, but they were never enough for me to stop drinking. In fact, I just self-medicated more with my drinking. And it wasn't until I was turning 36, so I was 35 going into my 36th year, where I started to feel like nothing was fun anymore. Like nothing, it was like all of the pain I had been pushing down, all of the emotional experiences, everything to just kind of keep showing up and keep going forward and, continuing to party and continuing to drink. It was like I was just going through the motions, and I was just broken. And I started searching everywhere to try and fix myself. You know what I mean? I was like going to therapy. I was, trying meditation. I was trying to run. I was doing all of these things. I was like just grasping. And my real like rock bottom for me, my emotional rock bottom came after another breakup. It was kind of like you're sitting there, you're going through this breakup that feels like every other breakup with a person who's been the same version of every emotionally unavailable guy you've ever dated. And there's just, more wine to be drank or more. And it was just kind of this, it just felt like everything came closing in on me. And I had gone up to upstate New York, where my mom lives, for a visit for one weekend shortly thereafter. And I went out with some friends and got drunk and was in my mom's garage at 36 years old and too wasted to find my keys. I couldn't figure out how to get into her house. And I just had a complete and total meltdown. I just started sobbing in her garage. And I was like, what am I doing? What is this even all about? I can't find keys to get into my mom's house at the age of 36 because I'm too drunk. And that was kind of my final straw.
Oh God, I was hanging on there. Like I was literally feel like I was watching a film as you were sort of telling me that, because you explained it so beautifully. Like I went through the journey with you and I resonated with so much. I always say that when I sort of tell my story, it feels like I believe everyone's stories are extraordinary, right? Mine feels like ordinary and extraordinary. It's like
Mm-hmm.
a real like I can imagine a million women nodding along and going, yeah, it was just what we did to fit in. It
Yeah.
was, it seemed part of the fabric. It is part of the culture. It's just that, I don't know, the uninvited guest that is somehow always there,
Yeah.
invited in our lives, that we didn't invite, it just was there. And then yeah, the just the internal difficulties and that
Mm.
confusion, man. The confusion of this isn't working, but it almost sounds like it doesn't even seem an option to stop. It's like, why?
Yeah. No, it doesn't. And the thing is that even after I had that, emotional rock bottom of sobbing in my mom's garage, and I'm sure you can probably relate to this, it's like that's just the realization. Like just that's the moment where you realize this isn't working, but actually getting to that point where you're like, okay, I need to remove the substance. That still takes time. That's something I think is so important to share because I think so many people think you have this epic rock bottom moment and then boom, everything changes. But really, it's just that realization that things can't go on the way they are. And then you still have to figure out what that means.
Yeah, yeah, you do. And then there's that. I mean, we often sort of use that word, the kind of
Yeah.
liminal space of like, and I think this, now looking back on it, it's why it's so terrifying as well, isn't it? When you have that realization that the old has got to fall away. I can't
Yeah.
keep doing this anymore. Something's got to change. But I have no freaking clue what it's going to look like. I have no roadmap for this. And that moment, that terrible, brilliant, beautiful, dreadful moment, that
Yeah.
I think we have, you talk to people who've stopped drinking and have that some point you just go, oh fuck, and it is the oh fuck that is the catalyst.
And it's interesting. It's like we talk about our sober stories or what kind of led us to sobriety. And it's so hard to encapsulate like everything because there's so many nuances, right? So best we can do is just hit on the highlights of the things that kind of got us to that moment. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And so, so you're there. What do you do next? How do you begin your journey into sobriety, into recovery?
Yeah. So I had that moment, and then like I said, it was kind of this knowing, like I knew I had to stop drinking, but it's not that easy. It's not as easy as just stopping, right? So I carried on drinking, but not to the extent that I was, because I had this new awareness. It didn't feel good. I knew it didn't feel good, but I didn't have the tools to change my habits. I didn't know where to begin. As you said, it's kind of feels like this impossible thing. And in the beginning, you have absolutely no way. I mean, this is what keeps us drinking for so long, besides the fact that it's an addictive substance. You actually cannot imagine your life without this substance. Like, what do I do when I get home from work? What do I do on the weekends? Like, it's an impossibility, right? So what I did after that moment was I continued seeking. Like, I took a meditation course. I started a meditation practice. I started working with a coach, not a sober coach, but more of like a career development, personal development coach, right? Like I was just continuing to do all of this work. And in the process of this meditation practice that I had committed to, I was in meditation one day, and it was just all of that stuff that had come to me in my mom's garage that night just came in clear as day in meditation, like almost screaming at me, like, you have to stop drinking. Like, if you stop drinking, everything that you're trying to fix will feel alleviated. Like, this is the thing, you know? And so it was at that moment that I said, okay, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to figure it out. So I stopped drinking. I just stopped. I felt like I was completely floundering, because what do you do, right? Like, I mean, you know this from the work that you do and the clients that you have. It's like, what do you even do? And at this point, I had gotten curious enough that I was, you know, following sober Instagram accounts and starting listening to podcasts and just anything. And so I signed up for this sober summer group that was hosted by Amanda Kuda, who I think was just getting her start at that point. And in the past, I had taken breaks from booze, you know, but it was just like white knuckling, and it was just thinking of when those 20 days or 30 days would be up so you could drink again. And so I had this felt serious to me. This felt like my life depended on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I just started baby steps. I signed up for Amanda's group, and I took it so seriously. I read everything she posted. I watched every single video. I asked questions when I felt uncomfortable asking questions. You know what I mean? I just committed to not just not drinking, but not drinking and understanding why I wanted to not drink, why I was drinking. It just became really introspective. And I changed everything that I did in my life, from the time I left the office to the route I took home to, you know, signing up for yoga classes when I would have gone to the bar, to, you know, blocking anyone on or muting anyone on Instagram who was going to give me FOMO. I didn't know why I was doing these things, because I didn't have the language for it. And I didn't have the understanding of, you know, that these are real tools and things we can put in practice. I was just in this like survival mode, you know? And so I did all of these things. If I had free time, I was listening to a sober podcast. If I was, you know, felt antsy with my hands, I would pick up and draw something. You know, I would make sure to have my booze-free drink in my wine glass, because that felt good to me. And I just did all of these things to get through.
Yeah.
I finished that month, and I didn't want to stop. I didn't want to start drinking again. And that felt new to me, and that felt foreign to me. And so I just decided to keep going. And I remember not knowing what I was doing, how to name or identify how I felt or what this journey was. You know, I would tell people I was on a cleanse, or I just had taken a little break, and I was just going to, you know, keep taking a break, and all these things that, because it's like you can't even process what you're doing yet, right?
No. Yeah.
So I was 3 months into this unidentifiable journey, and I was on a train headed back from upstate New York into New York City. And I started thinking about drinking again, and what that looked like and what that felt like. And all of the work that I had done to alleviate my anxiety and my worry and all of this, that is one of the benefits of, you know, removing alcohol, with just the thought of drinking again, skyrocketed, you know, oh my God, I'm going to have to moderate my drinking. I'm going to have to try and have just one and go home. Like that feels impossible to me. Like, what does this mean? And I just had not come to terms with this idea that I could be sober forever and live this big, beautiful life, you know? So I'm on this train ride, and I remember saying this kind of like Hail Mary prayer, you know, where you're just kind of like, please, God, give me some sort of sign. Like, what in the hell am I doing? Like, I have no roadmap here. Who am I without this substance? Like, what does this mean? And what does it all look like? And so I had listened to this episode of Ruby's Sober Curious podcast. And she had this guest on, Holly. She had a guest on, Holly. And Holly was talking about this book that she had written, and it was going to come out in that January or something like that. And so she had written this book. It was, going to be really groundbreaking around sobriety and all this stuff. And I'm just kind of like immersed in the conversation. And at one point in the conversation, Ruby starts talking about astrology. I don't even know how the pivot was made in the conversation.
Yeah.
So they start talking about Bill W. and, the founder of AA and his astrological sign. And Ruby goes, yeah, Bill was a Sagittarius sun and a Pisces moon. And I don't know much about those placements, but I've heard that anybody with a Pisces moon should really just steer clear of booze. And I'm sitting there listening to it, and I'm like, holy shit, I have
your Pisces moon. That was it.
Sagittarius sun and a Pisces moon. I'm like, I have the same placements as Bill W. He didn't drink.
Was the founder of the whole of the sign.
Yeah. So it sounds so silly, but it was like I had asked for this sign, and I felt like that was my sign. Like I felt like it was like, okay, here's this little nod.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I had this tremendous sense of
it's like
relief.
A wink from the universe, that one, isn't it? It's a little cheeky wink.
I had this tremendous sense of relief. I literally decided in that moment that I was done. And all of that tension, that back and forth, that imagining, it just kind of lifted. And I felt like I was 100 pounds lighter.
Yeah. I find that really interesting because, you talk about rock bottom, and then that's almost like the opposite. It's like a nadir. No, it's the nadir, the bottom. Hiatus is the top one, isn't it? And I feel like I had a similar, like I had like the stop, and then I actually did go back to start after a year. But then I had but it was the moment of connection. So when you said, please just give me a sign, and you got the sign.
Yeah.
I mean, actually what's happening in the nervous system at that point and in your brain is a moment of connection, right?
Truly.
Actually, so that's the connection is made, and that was enough to go, okay, here I am, to stop.
I'm
that.
not alone.
No, yeah. And for me, it was listening to Tara Brach on that last Please God Touchwood day one, the Tara Brach meditation, the Reign of Self-Compassion. And it was like I felt for the first time I'd made a connection with myself, like literally. That was it. So there's those moments, that's weird sort of, you have those awful like moments of who the fuck am I, but then you get those moments of there's the connection, there's my solid ground somehow. Okay, I'm gonna be okay. I relate.
And there was one more big synchronicity in that moment for me, which you already know.
Sorry, but
So I'm listening to this interview with Ruby and this woman, Holly, and I'm like, gosh, this Holly sounds so familiar. Like her voice sounds so familiar. Where do I know this person from? And so I just get on my phone and I do a quick Google of Holly Whitaker was her last name. You might have heard of her. And I see her photo come up and I go, holy shit, that's Holly, my downstairs neighbor.
I just still can't believe that story. So it's like not only, yeah, you've got the star sign of the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, but actually you've got kind of probably the most famous person in the whole world, Holly Whitaker, as your neighbor.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a couple of signs there.
We're texting. I'm like, oh, this is the woman I text about, like, you know, what's going on with her cat. And did she hear that noise outside? And meanwhile, you know, I've probably been like just absorbing her energy or something. I mean, it was the most wild connection. And it was this just purely, you know, like it was just a pure synchronicity moment. And I was like, okay, I hear you loud and clear.
I think the universe had your back.
Yeah, truly.
I love that story. I just love that story so much. It's hilarious. Yeah. You just had a really good sense, actually. You followed your kind of instincts about what you needed.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounded like, so for people who aren't sort of sober, I suppose it would sound, I wrote down radical.
Yeah.
And then that led me to go on to your, you know, your that's what the name of your business, right? It's the Radical Wellness. What does it mean to you, the radical, radical wellness? Why that?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, what it means, and I think, you know, what it is that we're ultimately trying to do in sobriety or coaching people in sobriety is to reconnect with self in a seemingly radical way. I say seemingly because at first it all seems just so like, radical, right? So impossible, or just like, you want me to do what? Or I should do what? But everything that you're doing in sobriety is just getting back to who you really are, right? And it's such a phenomenal, beautiful process. The idea, like you said, it seems like you were just kind of, or I was just kind of following what it was that I felt I needed to do, is that idea of self-trust, right? We lose trust in ourselves. We lose touch with our intuition. We lose touch with our real needs. You know, we default to drinking alcohol, to showing up socially for other people, people pleasing, working, all of those things. Radical wellness is about taking care of yourself first and foremost, trusting yourself, listening to your own needs, even when they seem completely ridiculous, like trusting that that's what you need. That's what's coming up for you, you know?
Yeah, I love that. And that's that. Just, it's so badass, I think, sobriety.
I agree.
And it's like that. Yeah. I mean, the things that I've learned over the last few years about, and it keeps coming, like I've got some big boundary stuff going on at the moment, and I'm kind of circling back, you know, and then you go through another life cycle, right? So then so there's more, and how it's just fascinating. It's fascinating. It's like, why would we miss that? Now it's like, why would I miss that? Wow, this is freaking like the most fascinating thing that I've ever done, is kind of live. I don't know what else I've done, but it really is. It's like and I see that curiosity in people. You know, you see that, don't you, in clients and with as friends, sober friends go along. This like reigniting the fuse. I don't know.
That's exactly it. I mean, when I have it's like when I start working with a client, and at the beginning of a program, they'll always have these kind of like, they feel like very far off dreams or goals, like little things that they want to achieve, but they just feel so big and impossible, right? And then you get to that point in the program where they're like, you know what? I did it. I signed up for that dance class that I've been wanting to take my whole freaking life. And oh my God, and the way that I connected to like the movement and the this and the that. And you're like, that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about, is like, we go through our whole adult lives neglecting experiences like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the conversations are definitely shifting. I think that, I would say even just the number of people who reach out to me just out of pure curiosity of like having conversations in like a safe space of like I'm questioning this, or I'm exploring this, like outside of the coaching realm, just like in real life.
Yeah.
It's like there's a lot more discussions going on. There's so many more people who are living their sober lives out loud. There's so many opportunities for, to go someplace and have delicious booze-free drinks or find an alcohol-free bottle shop. And I really think there's a shift happening. I don't think we'd be doing what we're doing if we didn't think that there was a shift coming.
Yeah. And what was I going to say? Yeah, I was going to ask you about your foundational well-being practices.
Yeah. So movement is huge for me. That seems so simple, but just being able to move my body in some form of exercise, it doesn't have to be intense exercise. It's just, I always knew this about myself, but in sobriety realized that it's like where I do all of my processing, it's how I move through emotions. It's just like such a necessary part of my wellness practice. Also, I do a lot of work with essential oils. They were part of my early sober toolkit. Before I knew what a sober toolkit was.
What's your favorite one?
I use a lavender oil. It's just, I use a lot of different oils, but lavender is like my go-to. It's in my bag at all times.
Yeah. So I was going to say, like last week, I had a really, really horrendous week, the week before last.
Yeah.
And a whole cluster of things happening on one particular day. And I have a sober friend, and she lives quite a way away. She doesn't live close to me. And I got a little thing in the post, and she'd sent me her bottle of eucalyptus oil. She just uses it as emotional rescue, but she was like, she had a feeling I needed it. I was just going to have a mother of all days.
Yeah.
And so she was like, she'd sent me her bottle. And I was like, that's so sweet.
Did you love it?
So kind of, oh my God, it literally grounded me. I was I was spinning. I had too much going on.
Yeah.
And I rubbed it between my hands and I just smelt it, and it was like, okay, I'm going to be okay.
It's incredible. Yeah. They're really powerful.
Yeah.
It wasn't really until I trained with you and Mandy that you were able to bring language for me around this idea of like the sensory, having different, like go-to sensory comfort things. I'm not being very articulate, but and I was like, all these things started clicking for me where I was like, oh my gosh, like for me, when I was first sober, I would travel with essential oils, something. I had like a bracelet made of stones that felt cool that I could touch, teas, like all of these things that we kind of just use as our go-tos. And those are all part of my toolkit today. Finding what works, what calms your nervous system, what makes you feel grounded, and using those as a part of your consistent practice, or for me has been, So
me too.
Yeah. And, you know this about me too, but nutrition, is a really key part of my wellness practice, and, eating well and eating enough and eating the right foods is such a key component to sustainable sobriety, in my opinion. A lot of times, I would argue all of the time, when we're drinking and drinking regularly, we're neglecting our core, nutritional needs. It's just you default to getting pizza or something greasy, rather than what it is that you really need. And so, yeah, that's really important to me too. And I mean, honestly, I'm kind of like a self-care queen.
I love it. Yeah, me too.
And I'll try any of the
Any
healing
excuse.
modalities that I feel, called to. I'll try it. It's one of those things that like you just, or for me, like I feel like that's money well spent, investing in my own self-care, my own wellness. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, writing has been a huge part of sobriety for me. I wrote, when you stop drinking and get to that point where you aren't fighting reconnecting to the things that make you tick, where you're actually like giving into those things. For me, it was going back, and I think this is very common, but going back to those things that you loved as a child, right? Which for me were reading. I used to just read voraciously when I was a kid, writing for the purpose of just writing.
Yeah. Things for the sake of
creating, like just
lush.
any sort of, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it felt so indulgent in the best possible way. And then for me, writing became a true tool in my toolbox. And it's something that I practice with regularity. I have a mailing list for the Radical Wellness, and my mailing list is I mean, because you have a Substack and you write beautifully and all of these things, but it's this outlet. It's a way to share personal essays, not, you're not selling something. It's like, this is my heart on this page for you to connect with. And that's been a huge tool in my toolbox.
I do. I had a moment of vulnerability recently because I've only just recently started that Substack. I used to just do newsletters through Kajabi, which is the platform I use. It's just suddenly I've forgotten I'm on the podcast. I'm just having a little coach chat here about what software I use, and it would be what's going on. But actually, I've reconnected, like you said, with writing, and I've written a couple of quite honest Substacks the last couple of weeks. Man, the vulnerability complex that I've had afterwards, but I feel, I had a couple of people get in touch with me and say thank you, or just of like, or I hope you're doing okay. It sounds tough. And I was like, that's so lovely. And actually, I try to balance it with like, I want to provide value.
Yeah.
But actually, part of my recovery is not always being useful. So I want to be able to be honest. So it's an interesting spot. It's always comfortable. So how great to write into that spot. Whoa, what are we gonna I
know
process when we're writing in that space? That feels creative, right? And again,
I have this this kind of like this little motto around like what you're describing about that kind of intense vulnerability that comes up and that push that you need to like hit send or to talk about it or whatever it is. And it's like I always just hear in my head when that happens, like if it's coming up for me, it's coming up for someone else. So it's almost like it's like my responsibility to put it out there. Because even if one person reads it and it resonates, it matters.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like that's there's part of the healing process as well, isn't it? I guess, now talking about alcohol, now talking about recovery, that feels pretty safe now to me. It didn't at the beginning. My God, like publishing my blog online for the first time was the first time someone outed me accidentally on the sober meetup on Facebook. I literally didn't want to leave the house for about 10 days because I was like, someone's fucking outed me. No one's going to let their kids play with my kids. I was just like freaking out, right? And now that feels safe. And then some of the stuff that then comes up now, it feels things about taboos, and vulnerabilities and real things. So it's rich. It's rich for sure, isn't it? That territory.
It is, yeah.
I would like to ask you, so if I said to you, I'm coming to you and I'm just like, you know what, I've got a problem with drinking. I don't think I can stop. I don't know who I am, what I'm, I can't do this. What would you say to me to help me through that moment?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that of course you feel like that. Of course you feel like you can't stop or don't know how to stop, or it feels like an impossibility, because that's how it's supposed to feel. Like the first thing that happens is that you consciously make this decision that you want to stop. Well, you have to battle, all of this subconscious programming that you've subjected yourself to for all these years. You have to combat this highly addictive substance that you've been partaking in for years. It's not supposed to feel easy. But I believe 1,000% that you do have the ability to stop drinking, that you do know what it is that you really need, and that thing isn't alcohol, and that it's absolutely possible to get to that place where you trust yourself again. And yeah, like I always say it's my absolute honor and pleasure in this lifetime to be able to help somebody find their way back there.
I love that. I just find a huge comfort in, no matter what shit is going down every single day, if you get up sober and you go to bed sober, it's enough.
Truly,
it's like that's it. I've won today. I've won. Like everything else looks like this thing's going on in flames and floods and acts of God, but you know what? I went to bed sober and I fucking won.
It's true. It's like that keeping perspective, especially, when you're talking to people who are in early sobriety and struggling with this idea of perfection, or like nailing sobriety, right? And it's like, did you not drink today? Did you remember to drink water and eat snacks? Like just take care of yourself on this very basic level that a lot of us forget to do. Well, then you've won the day. Like that's actually huge.
Yeah, it's so huge. It's so huge.
Yeah.
Oh, it's been so lovely to talk to you.
It's so lovely talking to you.
Yeah, I'm really glad we got to do it. And as you know, we always end with firstly, what's your tip of the day?
Yeah. My tip of the day is this something I say often, but is to remind yourself that you're worth the effort. If you're on the fence thinking, should I or shouldn't I do this thing that seems hard or that I need or whatever, I mean, just tell yourself you're worth the effort. Do the damn thing.
Love that. And what is your reason to love sober today?
Oh my gosh, don't make me cry. My reason to love sober today is my news that I shared with you before we started the podcast, which is that I'm pregnant.
Oh, I love a moment too. That's beautiful.
And I'll tell you, I'm 40 years old and I'm going to be having my first child at 40. And to a lot of people, that might seem late. But for me, it feels right on time. I know with absolute certainty that had I chosen another path, that had I chosen to continue drinking, that I wouldn't have been able to receive this gift. Physically, I wouldn't have been able to receive this gift. And just emotionally and spiritually, I wasn't open to receiving this gift. And it feels like my greatest manifestation in sobriety.
Oh my goodness. Oh, you made me tear up as well. Oh, I'm so delighted for you. And
Thank you.
what beautiful note to end on. And what a blessing. Thank you.
Thank you for letting me share.
Oh, so we'll say goodbye. So if you're immediately concerned about your drinking, do just reach out, get in touch, send up a flare, find a group to connect with. Send me an email at kate@lovesober.com. I'll put everything about how to find Courtney and the Radical Wellness on the show notes. And we'll say goodbye and thanks again, Courtney.
Thank you. It was so lovely talking to you. Thank you.